I wanted to mention just before we begin the hassles of getting projects that we wanted. The government was insisting on spending $1 million to give to the University of Toronto and CAMH for a project that would have had nothing, absolutely zero, to do with survivors or the institutions. We were adamant that that was a waste of money and that would be entirely unacceptable. We got that project removed, but at tremendous cost, because we had to give up 2 projects that were worth $1 million. One project was 30 professional musicians across Ontario, and these are people you have heard, who you've listened to, who you have seen performed. We're going to collaborate with 30 survivors to make music that would have been professionally done and would have gotten out there into the general public all across Canada. And you have seen the kinds of skills and talents that folks have with music and what music can do for people. We had to give that project up. The second project was a documentary video being made by a filmmaker named Barry Cohen. And Barry Cohen has been with the survivors right from the beginning. 8 years ago, she was at the Visitations, filming the grounds of Huronia Regional, filming Rideau, and talking to survivors and getting their stories. And God bless Barry, she has not given up. On her own ticket, and with some funding, she has been able to continue, and hopefully she is going to get money from CBC that she still needs a couple of $100,000, but she's hoping to get funding from CBC, and it will be one of the doc project films that is shown across Canada. So that was the other project that we were forced to give up. So it was not a bed of roses to get the projects, and we had to turn down some very worthwhile projects to get the funding and get agreement. A week and a half ago, I went out to Manitoba and I met with the plaintiff in the class action lawsuit that is being started out there. It's called the Manitoba Development Center. Ironically, that's where a lot of the People First action started with a video. Somebody help me. What was that video called? The Freedom Tour, of course. But that institution is still open. There are 160 people in that institution, and the class action lawsuit, once it gets underway, I have strong feelings that it will close that institution. That's what I'm hoping for. Like institutions in Ontario, yeah. It's located in Portage-la-Prairie, small town of 15,000. Like the institutions in Ontario, they never located them in the center of cities, God forbid. They were always outlying from small communities, generally out of sight, out of mind, that whole philosophy. The one thing that I really wish for is that that settlement in Manitoba is better than the Huronia settlement. The settlements that have followed Huronia have all been worse. Huronia spent all of its money on survivors and on projects. Rideau and Southwestern Ontario returned $1.5 million to the government. The third following the Schedule I institutions that followed had no Cypre money, only money to survivors, and I would be willing to bet that they returned millions to the government, and it didn't get to the survivors of the Schedule I institutions. Unfortunately, that information is not public. One of the things that Yasminka, as a law professor, is working towards is to make class action lawsuits open to the public. So all of the information is out there, how many claimants there are, how much they get in their claims, where the money goes, and if any money is going back to the person who is being sued, in this case the Government of Ontario. That's called a reversion. So good luck to them in Manitoba. We have two presentations. Vita Community Living Services that received $515,000 for their project, and Community Living Dundas County, who received $88,000. Please, when you start, Vita, introduce yourselves and take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for sharing space and welcoming us to present what we have come to learn and understand and practice within the clinical department of Vita. We come from the Trauma to Trust Clinic. My name is Virginia Jiayu. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am an expressive arts therapist.
My name is Amanda G., and I'm an art therapist and registered psychotherapist.
And my name is Jessica Capra. I'm a registered psychotherapist completing verbal psychotherapy.
So the project that we at Vita Community Living Services started is the Trauma to Trust Clinic. From Trauma to Trust operates a free clinic that provides therapeutic services to people with intellectual disabilities who've experienced trauma. The service includes art therapy, counseling, psychotherapy, and expressive arts therapy. People have the option to choose from a menu of services that includes individual counseling and participation in group work. The group options include an expressive arts therapy drop-in group and an aerobics and affirmation group. Clients are able to participate in individual sessions, group sessions, or both. Though the clinic operates physically out of Vita Community Living Services, our therapists have been able to provide group therapy for individual agencies at their locations as well through e-therapy.
The people we primarily serve come from the Greater Toronto Area, but since offering e-therapy, our services now are used province-wide. And this is particularly important for folks who don't live in regions where they have access to therapy that are adapted to their needs and their desires and their wishes. We have placed no restrictions on referrals, and therefore we provide services to people with a broad range of intellectual developmental disabilities as well as dual diagnosis. We do not require an individual to have speech or other forms of traditional therapy to participate in our therapeutic services. As you can see, we offer an array of different modalities so that it can be adapted to the needs of the people that we serve. Some of our greatest gains have been to offer services to those who are traditionally and historically have been denied services in psychotherapy and creative therapy interventions. And these people were also thought to be unable to benefit from therapy or any forms of healing therapy. So we are very honored to be able to work in the sector and with folks who need this help, coming from trauma to trust.
The clinic is also data-based. Data is completed on symptoms at the beginning and end of session and therapy. There's also data completed each session for feedback to the therapist. So this allows our therapists to ensure that the needs of the individuals are being met and that their voice is guiding the process of therapy, not necessarily therapist-driven, but client-driven. So this allows us to evaluate our service on a daily basis as well. More specifically within my role in the agency, as I mentioned before, I'm a registered psychotherapist, primarily practicing cognitive behavior therapy, dialectical behavior therapy, and psychodynamic therapy with the individuals that we serve.
So, as I've mentioned, I offer expressive arts therapy, and that encompasses the different modalities of the arts. And that includes music, it includes visual arts, drama, storytelling, and theater. And today I'd like to share with you a principle and practice that we as clinicians at the Trauma to Trust Clinic practice, as well as offering you a resource and an understanding of one of the roots of expressive arts therapy. So there's a principle that we call low skill, high sensitivity. Low skill, high sensitivity. And if I may share a story with you about an individual that I've been working with that has been living in been institutionalized for many years of her life and have been denied services in psychotherapy and therapeutic interventions. I've been working with this individual now for over 8 months. Just to give you a little bit of the background information, this individual is a non-traditional communicator, doesn't use language to express herself, and have very limited access to mobility. So to be more specific, she can only move her left hand. So when I think about expression and about sharing our stories, and for somebody with limited access to communicate these stories, how do we tap into this? And how does therapy and how can therapy work for an individual? So for me and for our clinicians here, we understand that quality of life is one thing that we can work with and toward, yeah? We get some snaps. So what happened is within these sessions, what I would do is I would bring out percussive instruments. I would bring out perhaps a clicker, or maybe even some simple bells. And within our 8 months of sessions together, we have been able to now use these instruments and use these relatively low-skill instruments and using in our hands so that she can create rhythm. We also are building our therapeutic relationships by mirroring each other in the rhythms that have been shared. And through this process, I have learned the power of the arts and expression through music, through visual arts, and other forms that are non-traditional ways, that are outside of the traditional talk therapy mode.
Again, my name is Amanda, and I'm a registered Canadian art therapist and a registered psychotherapist. Within the Trauma to Trust Clinic, I provide mainly art therapy and grief counseling, as well as co-facilitating the drop-in based arts group with Virginia. Art therapy, very simply, is making art within the therapy session. It is a form of psychotherapy that doesn't rely on verbal skills, and it provides a mean to express thoughts and feelings that are too difficult to express in words. So in session, people can express themselves with the art materials, as Virginia was saying, and in their artwork, and they don't need to have the words to express what was going on or their inner world. Within the clinic, some of the referrals that have come to me are from people who've experienced trauma but have not been able to access any appropriate therapy for them to process it. One parent told me that the verbal therapy wasn't accessible for their child at all, and that they'd been at a loss before being referred to art therapy. And actually when they came, they didn't really know what art therapy was, but they were willing to try anything to help. Other people who've accessed the service through Trauma to Trust have told me that therapy has been too intimidating for them, and that the art therapy space feels much safer, because it's not like a doctor's office or a setting like that. It's in a warm room where people can feel free to be themselves. Regardless of the reasons that people have been coming to us, it's great to be able to provide more accessible therapy options. So in closing, we just want to say that we're honored to be doing this work and to be able to share it here with you today.
I'll use the podium, yeah, so I don't have to go back. Yeah. Short person's mic. Thank you. Hi. Start my timer. Thank you. Can you pass my clicker down? Thank you. So we're from Community Living Dundas County, and our project is called the Broadening the Healing Journey. I'm proud to share the stage with Dan Levere. Dan's a survivor of institutional trauma. And he is a great, great representative of what we speak to today about character strengths and positive moving forward in life. So we're really proud to have Dan as part of our project. We're proud to be creating this project on behalf of Dan and individuals in the agency who are survivors. My name is Jerry Casey. I am a social worker who was brought on board to help with the project, and I've had a long-standing relationship with the agency. Dan and I go back about 15 years, and about 6 of that years was professional on my part, and in the last 9 years or so, it's been friendship. So as I speak to things today in terms, we'll speak to Dan and some of his experiences. I kind of speak from that kind of an insight and that kind of relationship with Dan as well. We call our project Broadening the Healing Path in 2 regards. We wanted to broaden the opportunities and the sense of range of things of quality life that individuals who survived institutional settings had in terms of their path forward. Joe spoke really well in his presentation about the idea of moving forward in a healing way and in a healing journey. And our approach and our goal was to broaden that opportunity for individuals. The second piece, though, and I think is equally as important, our approach in our project is meant to broaden the perspective of frontline staff who are supporting individuals in that journey. And it's one of the key pieces that we're going to bring forward as we speak about this project. We wanted to find an approach that was non-traditional, unique, but that was evidence-based and spoke from a trauma survivor perspective. And to that extent, we came across the model of positive psychology and character strengths-based interventions. Positive psychology is a study of conditions and processes that contribute to flourishing. Focus on building positive emotions, positive strengths, and positive meaning in people's lives to achieve what we call a life of flourishing. Studies what makes people happier, what gives their life a sense of satisfaction and meaning. And it articulates a vision of what that good life is, and even more importantly, gives us steps and activities and things that we can do, that individuals can do, and that people that support them can do to contribute to that healing path and contribute to them being able to express and live their strengths. This won't read very well on the screen, but when we talk about character strengths, in terms of the approach we're taking, there was a lot of research done in this model to find and identify character strengths, and they exist across all cultures, across all historical times, across all religions. These are what are found to be human, universal human character strengths. Our approach in our project was to identify those character strengths and help individuals understand, individuals who are working with the people that we're supporting, to understand how do you not stand in the way of those character strengths, and how do you actually help people to achieve them. People who are institutional survivors understand their strengths. We don't have to necessarily educate people about their strengths. In many ways, we have to get out of the way of getting in the way of those strengths, and we have to actually contribute to them being able to live those strengths and understand that they have that right to live those strengths. Part of our project was identifying character strengths, and Dan scored remarkably high on the character. Typically with this model, you pick the person's top 5 character strengths to work on or to focus on as they're things that are most significant to them, most like them, most meaningful to them, that most represent them. And Dan scored remarkably high in zest, in kindness, in teamwork, gratitude, and in humor. Not only were these high in his character strengths, he uses them in a high level. He enjoys them in a high level. He lives them in a high level. I would challenge any of us in the room to take some of the surveys we've done and score higher in these than Dan has. And it's a big piece of Dan's life that he lives and the value in his life. Zest. Zest in the terms that we speak of here is when you have zest in life, you have an approach that all things I do with excitement. enthusiasm and energy. Someone that has zest. For them, life is an adventure. How do we help focus that with individuals? How, when we're professionals on the front line, do we bring that to bear? How do we engage that? It's a big piece of what our project is looking at and leading towards. Kindness. Dan scored remarkably high in kindness. I'm kind and generous to others. I enjoy doing good deeds for others. I get positive emotional benefit from that. And that speaks to Dan. Teamwork was one of the key skills that was identified for Dan. He excels in being part of a group. He's loyal and dedicated as a team member, as a co-member of any kind of group that Dan's part of. So that was identified as a really strong skill for Dan. Gratitude. I appreciate every day that I am alive. I am grateful when I am struck by beauty or when I'm in awe of something. Again, this speaks to Dan's character. These are character traits that any of us would really benefit from. We all have pieces of this. And humor. Bringing smiles to others is important to me. This is Dan's words. People consider me to be fun around. That's definitely the case with Dan. So the idea with character strengths is not just to identify them and have them out there as some sort of very general thing. And the idea is, what do we do with that? What do we do with these strengths, and how do we help people to live those strengths, to activate those strengths? You know, according to this theory, we are at our strongest and at our best when we use the strengths that are most intense to us, most germane to us, when we are doing things that are most interesting to us. That's when we're at our best. That's when we're flourishing. So with this model, not only do we identify those strengths, but from there, we identify ways in larger life goals that those strengths can be activated, and also in little everyday situations as well. We're going to look to help Dan flourish. Dan's in his post-retirement mode right now. And our goal right now is to help Dan flourish and help Dan, quite frankly, have a quality of life in his retirement that was probably, better than his quality of life in his work life was. So our goal is to move forward, to tap into these strengths that we've found with Dan and help him to use those on a day-to-day basis. All right. Two things like story strengths, or character strength storytelling. When we engage with people at the front line, I've been a frontline social worker, so I kind of reserve some right to be critical here. So if I offend people, I won't apologize because I'm being honest. But what do we talk about people? What do we talk to people about when we're on the front line, when we're in their homes, when they're in their space? What are the discussions we're having? Are we having those discussions? Or are we sitting around and sort of waiting for the next thing to come up that we might be doing? Or are we having some substantive conversations about things that are important and that person's really about? Often we don't. And part of our theory here and part of our goal here is to give people tools that they can use to do that. For people that really want to, great tools. For people who may not be as oriented that way, going to kind of push it in that direction. Can we spot signature strengths? Strength spotting. Imagine being a staff member where you're actually tabulating things people do well, as opposed to finding things we think they do wrong. I mean, this is a shift in our approach with this. We won't get into as much detail today around timing, around the actual interventions, but the idea here is direct tools, direct things that we will give to frontline individuals working with survivors that will drive action, that will drive discussions, that will drive conversations, that will drive activities, that will help in planning larger life goals and whatnot. So towards that end with our project, we've identified and adapted and developed tools that are standardized tools that help to identify those individual strengths. Good thing I put that timer on it. Holy God. This is, yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Boy, that helped me not embarrass myself. Jeez. No, that was my wake up. So with our project, we developed tools, and we've been implementing them. Some tools are proxy surveys that ask these questions of people that support the survivors that our agency supports, staff members. And other tools have us interviewing and having discussions with the participants, with the survivors themselves, where it's appropriate, and where it's possible. We've found some really cool stuff with interviews with staff. We've had staff arguing about whether an individual's key strength is judgment or teamwork. I mean, how cool is that? As opposed to, looking at it from a behavioral management perspective, we're just that process of surveying around these is beginning to, I believe, to shift some focus and shift some perspective on people in terms of what we're really looking at, staff in particular, right? We've been training staff in the ideas and the tools and the perspective on this and getting buy-in. We're in this process now. We're midpoint in our project, and we've been developing tools that can be used with all participants in this project across all environments to help to activate those signature strengths. People have the ability to activate their signature strengths on their own. We just don't necessarily lead them on their own much to do the thing. So we got to get, if we're involved, let's be involved in our theory now is in some direction that move things forward. Right? Our idea is not just to have this sit as a change initiative that's just thoughts. Often I think as frontline staff, change comes and we see it like clouds coming and we'll sit and think, okay, we'll let those clouds pass, and then once the clouds pass, we keep doing what we do, right? And that's and I think that's often where the barrier to change has been. We talk about systems change and changing systems like it's shifting big ships, hard to shift, hard to turn. The reality is systems are made out of people. Now I'm speaking directly to professionals in the room. Systems are made out of us. We are the people that make up those systems. The people on the front line are, in our estimation, the difficult ships to turn. We are the ships that need to turn to be able to, to allow and to facilitate and engage people at this level. We are big ships to turn. But I'll quote an architect from the 60s and 70s, Buckminster Fuller, who he was a genius and a prodigy, and he devoted his life to the idea that very small, very well thought out changes could make significant differences for people. And therefore, one small person could make a difference. And working from this big ship to move analogy, I'm going to read a quote from Buckminster. He says, "Something hit me very hard once, thinking about what one little man could do. Think of the Queen Mary. The whole ship goes by, and then comes the rudder. And there is a little thing on the edge of that rudder called the trim tab. It's a miniature rudder, a little red rudder. Just moving that little trim tab builds a low pressure that pulls the rudder around, and it takes almost no effort. The whole boat turns. One little thing forces that rudder to turn and forces the boat to turn." Buckminster said, "So I said that the little individual can be a trim tab. The fact is that you can just put your foot out like that, and the whole big ship of state is going to go. So I said, call me trim tab." Our goal with this project is to create interventions, to create guidance and direction for frontline staff that will become this trim tab, that will make for that kind of significant change. And sometimes it only needs small things. And if I have time, I'll give you a brief example of how this would work and how it's working with Dan. Dan, because he has a zest for life, he has the huge ability to savor things, right? If you know something's fun coming up, Dan's savoring it, he's enjoying it, he's thinking about it, his system is pumping full of positive energy, and he's just right on it. When the thing is happening, he's in the middle of it, he's loving every minute of it. When he goes home afterwards, he's going to talk about it for a long time. He's going to love talking about it. That is a positive character strength that we're trying to engender. However, and remember, as Dan's friend, I had a conversation once with one of Dan's staff calling to set up a get-together with our friends at the garage. And I was asked to not let Dan know ahead of time about these visits because he talked about it so much, because he loved it so much. And my answer was, I don't do that with my friends. I don't call my friends at the last minute. And that's kind of like what you're there for, is to hear those stories. Not necessarily saying that was a bad person, but now the direction for that person and part of Dan's programming is going to be talk to him about that stuff. When Dan wants to talk about that stuff, you talk about it. And not just talk as if you're going to hear him talk, but interview him on that. Talk about that. Dan, what is it about that kind of situation that you really love? What is the good stuff about you that brings out? What are people really, what are they benefiting from, Dan, when you're in the room? What are you benefiting? Drawing that stuff out as opposed to closing it down because, you know, maybe you didn't want to hear about it. That's a trim tab moment in our mind. And we want to create a lot of those trim tab moments and shift that ship. And we're wrapping it up. Thank you. So that's our project and that's our goal. And Dan and I thank you for the time to be here.
Zach, could you come up on stage and get set up, please? Zach and his dad traveled down here from Huntsville today, out of the snow belt into the sunshine. Zach has a song called Labels.
Before I play the song, I just want to say hi to everybody watching online, and I wrote this song with my father. And I want to say hi to two very special people in my life, Kira and Adrian. I really hope you guys like this song. There's a man with a disability, not as plain as everyone can see. Doesn't think like everybody else. All he needs is just a little help. So he learns from day to day, tries to make it his own way. Some things he doesn't realize, it just comes to his surprise. And if he didn't feel alone, lived in a better home, he would be a better friend, time and time again. And we'll be living in a better world, helping every boy and girl try to do the best they can. Try to help somebody shine, everything will work out fine, helping out the fellow man. And if you open up your eyes, soon you'll realize labels are just a disguise. One love, Bob Marley said, care to join us? Go ahead. Keep thinking just like you are, I wouldn't be playing this guitar. Sometimes labels can be okay, but if they're not, I won't let them get in my way. Challenges are a part of life, accept them one at a time. And if you open up your mind, you will suddenly find people can learn to change, and kindness will exchange. And we'll be living in a better world, helping every boy and girl try to do the best they can. Try to help somebody shine, everything will work out fine, helping out the fellow man. And if you open up your eyes, soon you'll realize labels are just a disguise. We've got to learn to get together and do the best that we can do. Give us the chance to be included. You'll see what we can do. And we'll be living in a better world, helping every boy and girl try to do the best they can. Trying to help somebody shine, everything will work out fine, helping out the fellow man. And if you open up your eyes, soon you'll realize labels are just a disguise. They're just a disguise. Labels are just a disguise. Thank you very much.
Zach Fitzsimmons, well
Thank you
done,
so
Zach.
much.
All right, well, thank you very much to Community Living Dundas and to the Vita Community Service. Virginia had mentioned earlier that they would be happy to answer questions. Because the way things have rolled along, people didn't get the notice that they were only supposed to speak for 10 minutes. We haven't had the question time, and I know there are panel members and individuals who presented who really did want to be asked questions. So don't hesitate to go up to people. We're just going to do a short break here because if we can, I'd like to give us a little bit more time for supper before the play starts. So if the next two groups, remember every name, and Participation House from London could come and set up, we'll get going very shortly. So just stand and stretch. If you have to go outside, go, but we're going to keep rolling here.